A writer sometimes wishes to express how certain something is. When you want to express that something is certain, you can use phrases like "it is certain that," or "there is no doubt that," or "I am certain that," or "we are confident that the cause of the accident was a fault in the engine." For probability, we can use "it is probable that," or "it is likely that we will need extra funding." If you want to say that something is possible, you can use phrases like "local taxes can or may sometimes be lower in development zones," or "the recession could last for several years." A change in management might force us to reconsider our strategy. For expressing doubt, we can use phrases like "it is very doubtful whether," or "there is some doubt as to whether," or "I doubt whether the meeting will go through." If we want to say that something is improbable, we can use, for example, "the reduction in the research budget is unlikely to have any short-term effects." Phrases for expressing impossibility are "hiring more staff is impossible at this point." A writer focuses the reader's attention on something when he or she wants the reader to be aware of something or to note something. "I would like to draw your attention to," or "may I or we draw your attention to clause 12 of the enclosed contract," or "we would like to point out that," or "it should be noted that," or "please note that the listed prices do not include sales tax." A writer sometimes refers to two facts or options and makes contrast between them. Quite often, when making contrast, the less important fact or less attractive option is mentioned first. In spite of, or despite, poor short-term forecasts, we expect positive results in the long term. In spite of the fact that, or despite the fact that, the budget for next year has not yet been approved, the project will go ahead as planned. Or whereas, or while, or although, or even though the level of processing errors has been reduced, it's still far too high. The services provided by the R&D department are very expensive. However, the additional costs are well worth the extra money. The Japanese suppliers have put forward a very interesting proposal. On the other hand, having a supplier in Europe would be much more practical. Sometimes a writer needs to indicate that something is either important or very important. To emphasize that something is important, we can use, for example, "I," or "we," would like to remind you that, or "it is important to remember that payment is due on the 31st of March," or "it must be remembered that," or "it is worth noting," or "it's worth remembering that these results are preliminary." When we want to emphasize that something is very important, we can say something like, It is of the utmost importance that we maintain high personal hygiene standards. Or, I should like to stress the importance of expanding our operations into Asia. Or, this issue is of the utmost importance. Or, this issue is crucial. Or, this issue is vital. Or, this report is highly confidential. On no account or under no circumstances should you discuss it with anybody else. Often, a writer wants to express that there is more than one possible choice or course of action. There are two possible solutions to the problem. One is appoint extra staff on temporary contracts. Alternatively, we could extend the hours of the existing staff. Or, there are two possible solutions to this problem. One is to expand the existing lab. An alternative would be to move some of the research to India. Or, in our opinion, there are two options open to you. One is to take immediate legal action. The other is to issue a warning. We need to inform the patients as soon as possible. We can either inform them by email or send them a personal letter. Writers often give examples of a point they've just mentioned. We can use phrases like, security procedures in the building have been improved, for example, or for instance, or to give an example, staff must now carry an identity card at all times. Or other factors, such as the validity of our results, should be examined first. Or the R&D department is suffering from a severe shortage of skills. For example, in engineering design and information technology. Be careful not to confuse e.g. and i.e. e.g. means for example. i.e. means that is, used for an explanation. At the end of an email, the writer sometimes offers further assistance or supplies further information should the writer need it. If you have any further questions, or should you have any questions, we shall be happy to answer them. Or, should you require any further information, please do not hesitate to contact us. Or, please do not hesitate to contact us should you require any further information. Or, please let me know if we can be of any further assistance. This last phrase is considered to be quite informal. Often, a writer needs to give a sequence of actions to be carried out, or that have been carried out. At the beginning of a complex email or report, they may wish to show how they will sequence the different points they wish to make. Often, writers also need to give a list of facts. For example, to give a sequence, a writer may say, first, we must establish the cause of the delay. After that, we must consider what can be done to restart the work. Finally, we need to know the cause of the delay. Or, when you land at Kennedy Airport, you will be taken by car to the meeting with Mr. Anderson. Then you have an appointment at the research location. Finally, you will be driven back to the airport. Listing can be done like this. There are 3 ways to approach this problem. 1. To call in an outside consultant. 2. To conduct our own research, and 3. To implement the old plan. When certain actions are taken, they are often results or consequences which the writer wishes to mention. We were unsure about the correct measures to take, so we asked head office for guidance. We were unsure about the correct procedures. We therefore asked head office for guidance. Or, our decision to close the R&D facility is a consequence of the removal of government subsidies for research. Or, the law on fringe benefits has changed. We will consequently have to review the tax positions of our staff. Or, reduce the number of workers in a company and the result is lower running costs. Or, as a result, or as a consequence of the recent sales drive, our turnover has increased substantially. A writer may wish to indicate that an action is carried out to achieve an objective or a purpose. The hospital has decided to reduce the number of workers by 10% over the next 2 years in order to reduce costs. Or, staff training must be complete by the end of the month so that the timetable for introducing the new system can be met. Or, I should be grateful if we could postpone the meeting until the following week to give me time to study the report. A writer may want to indicate how something can be achieved. He wants to describe the method for achieving it. Profits can be increased by raising our selling prices. Or, the project was completed on time by employing extra staff. Or, errors can be avoided by careful attention to detail. It is important to remember that verbs that immediately follow prepositions end in ing. So, by raising, by employing, etc. A writer often has to inform the reader that certain conditions have to be fulfilled before an action can be taken. In English, there are 3 types of conditionals. The first one is used when talking about things that are generally true, or when talking about laws and rules. This is called the zero conditional. The first conditional is used to talk about future results that may or will occur if a certain condition is fulfilled. When talking about a result that would occur if a certain condition were fulfilled, the second conditional is used. Customers are allowed to return their products if they have a receipt. Or, if you are a citizen of an EU country, you can work in any country in the European Union. Or, if more than 50% of the shares of Company A are owned by Company B, Company A is regarded as a subsidiary of Company B. Or, unless you are qualified, you are not permitted to sell insurance to the general public. If a writer wants to express real possibilities, he could say, for example, if trading conditions deteriorate, we will revise our financial forecasts. Or, the factory will be closed down unless it receives a major new order. If a writer wants to express that something is unlikely to happen, he could use sentences like, if we were to relocate to Japan, our tax position would change radically. Or, if you restructured the company, you could reduce costs. The second conditional is often used for a tentative suggestion. Let's look at the following example. If you opened a branch in Japan, you would have access to more expertise. What this means is that the possibility may not have been seriously discussed yet. What the writer means is that the possibility should be considered. A change to the first conditional would mean a stronger possibility that the condition will be fulfilled. If you open a branch in Japan, you will have access to much more expertise. In this case, the possibility has already been considered, and it is likely that action is going to be taken. A writer often states the conclusion that has been reached, usually after giving the background facts of the situation first, along with a possible course of action. A conclusion is not a recommendation. It's the writer's interpretation of the situation or problem, as he or she understands it. For example, we conclude, therefore, that outsourcing is the most effective option. Or, from our findings, we have reached the conclusion that if this course of action is taken, the data we have now will be useless. Or, it is concluded that there are enormous differences in the trading conditions in these two areas. At the end of a complex report or email, the writer usually provides a brief summary. For example, to sum up, the implications of this action would be 1. A reduction of the number of research publications. And 2. A loss of expertise in various research areas. Or, to summarize, we would recommend further research into the area of genetic modification.